I am Louis Pasteur, a French biologist and chemist whose groundbreaking discoveries in microbiology and the development of vaccines revolutionized medicine, saving countless lives through pasteurization and advancements in the prevention of infectious diseases. Here are some facts about me. 3 of my 5 children died. At the age of 46 I was paralyzed. I used the achievements of my competitors and hid it. I stopped believing in God. All facts are truth. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. Section 1. 3 of my 5 children died. There are moments in life that leave scars so deep, even the sands of time cannot erode them. Scars etched not on the flesh but on the very soul. I speak to you not as a man of science, but as a father who has stood at the edge of despair, peering into the abyss of loss. I was blessed, or so I thought, with 5 beautiful children. Each one a candle, flickering with life's radiant glow. Marie and I would watch them as they played, their laughter filling the air like the sweet notes of a melody too beautiful to endure. And yet, fate, cruel, unrelenting fate, had other plans. 3 of my children, my dear Jean, Camille, and Cécile, were taken from us. Typhoid fever stole into our lives like a thief in the night, and with it, it took the very essence of our joy. I remember their small hands, their wide eyes filled with trust as they looked to me, their father, the protector of their world. Yet, I was powerless. A man of science, a seeker of truth, but against this invisible enemy, I was as helpless as any other. As a scientist, I had spent years studying microbes, observing the tiny forces of nature that could kill or heal. I had discovered the principles of fermentation, identified the causes of diseases, and pioneered the techniques that would lead to the development of vaccines. Yet, none of my knowledge could save my own children. Typhoid fever took them, and I watched helplessly as the disease claimed them one by one. It is a cruel irony, is it not? That a man whose life is dedicated to saving others should be helpless in the face of the very forces he seeks to understand. There are no words to describe the anguish of losing a child. To bury a child is a pain that no parent should ever have to endure. To feel the weight of earth falling upon a small coffin, knowing that within lies a piece of your heart that will never beat again. I would not wish this torment upon my worst adversary. Do you know what it is to feel such grief? To stand in the dark silence of your home, the absence of your children's laughter a constant echo in your soul. It was a grief that consumed me, that stripped away the joy I once knew. But it was also a grief that lit a fire within me. I could not stand by and allow this to continue. No father, no mother, should ever have to bury a child because of an unseen force, an invisible enemy that steals lives without warning. When I looked upon the lifeless forms of my children, I made a vow, silent, resolute, that I would spend my life unraveling the mysteries of disease, so that no father, no mother, would have to endure what Marie and I had endured. It was not science that drove me, it was love. Love for those I lost, love for those who might yet be saved. Each discovery, each breakthrough, was not merely a victory for knowledge but a tribute to Jean, Camille, and Cécile. Their laughter echoes in the pages of my journals, their smiles illuminate the darkest corners of my laboratory. And so, I turned my grief into action. I sought to understand the very nature of disease, to uncover the causes of the illnesses that plagued humanity. I developed the process of pasteurization, which would save countless lives by preventing the spread of dangerous bacteria in food and drink. I developed vaccines against rabies, anthrax, and chicken cholera, each a step toward a world where children no longer had to die from preventable diseases. But none of these discoveries were just scientific victories. They were personal victories, a way for me to honor the memory of my children. I remember the day I first administered the rabies vaccine. It was a moment of triumph, but also of grief. I thought of my own children, of the suffering they endured, and I knew that this was the promise I had made to them. This vaccine, this tiny vial of hope, was my gift to the world, my way of ensuring that no other parent would have to suffer as I had suffered. It was a tribute to my children, whose faces I shall see again only in the halls of eternity. This is not just a vaccine. It is a prayer, an offering, a promise fulfilled. To my children, whose faces I shall see again only in the halls of eternity, and to the countless lives yet to be spared from sorrow. It is through this work that I seek redemption, not for my mistakes, but for the suffering that I could not prevent. My children may be gone, but through my work, they live on. I have been called a man of science, a researcher, a pioneer. But I am also a man of love. For science is not cold calculation, it is love made manifest. For every equation, every experiment, every drop of sweat, there is a heart that beats with purpose. It is love for humanity, for life itself, that drives me to continue my work. My discoveries, my work, are not just for the glory of knowledge. They are for the children who will not die, for the parents who will not bury their young. They are for Marie, for Jean, for Camille, for Cécile. Remember this, my friends, science is not an abstract pursuit. It is the pursuit of life, of health, of a future free from the suffering that has haunted me for so long. It is about ensuring that no one else must endure the same sorrow. My work is not complete, nor will it ever be, for there will always be new challenges to face, new diseases to fight. But each victory brings us one step closer to a world where no one has to bury a child due to a preventable illness. Let us never forget the humanity behind our endeavors. For it is in love and loss that we find our greatest purpose. It is through these trials that we discover the true strength of the human spirit. And it is through our work that we honor those who came before us, those who gave their lives so that we might have a better world. I stand before you today, not just as a scientist, but as a father who has known both the depth of despair and the power of hope. Through my work, I hope to spare others from the agony I have known. Let us carry on, together, in the name of love, in the name of science, in the name of those we have lost and those we will save. The room falls silent as my words linger in the air, heavy with meaning, before the applause begins. Section 2. At the age of 46 I was paralyzed. There are many battles in life, are there not? Some are fought in the unseen world of microbes, where life and death dance upon the edge of discovery. Others, however, are fought within the confines of our own frail forms. My greatest adversary, you see, was not one of science but of flesh. It was the year 1868, and I was but 46 years old. In the prime of my life, they said, though what does prime mean when the body betrays the mind? One moment, I stood firm, resolute in my work, the next, I was brought low by a stroke that struck like lightning, sudden and unmerciful. I had spent years, even decades, focused on the study of microorganisms. I had made critical discoveries in the fields of microbiology and immunology. I was best known for my work on the germ theory of disease, a groundbreaking idea that would eventually change the course of medicine. Through my experiments, I demonstrated that microorganisms cause fermentation diseases, challenging the prevailing theories of spontaneous generation. I had developed vaccines for anthrax and rabies, and I had established methods to prevent bacterial contamination in wine, beer, and milk, thus improving public health and food safety. My career had been defined by action, by discovery, by breakthroughs that would shape the future of medicine. But then came the stroke. I remember it clearly, how I collapsed, my body suddenly betraying me. To awaken and find half of oneself unyielding, no longer obedient to the will, was a horror I had never imagined. My left side, once strong, had become a silent, lifeless partner in this symphony of being. I could no longer stride into my laboratory with confidence, nor embrace my loved ones as I once did. Even the simplest act of writing, a pen held between my fingers, became a struggle. At first, the stroke seemed like a death sentence. I had lived my life with purpose and vigor, and now I was confined to a body that no longer responded. I could no longer work at the pace I had once enjoyed, nor could I continue to contribute to the scientific community as I had before. I had spent years tirelessly pursuing knowledge, and now I was forced to confront the limitations of my own body. But even in those early days of recovery, I knew that I could not simply give up. I had witnessed the devastation of disease, the suffering of the human body, and the helplessness that so many felt in the face of illness. I had devoted my life to alleviating that suffering, to uncovering the mysteries of life and death that plagued humanity. I could not abandon the work that had been my life's calling, no matter how frail my body had become. With time, my resolve only grew stronger. I returned to my work with a renewed sense of purpose. The stroke had changed me, yes, but it had not broken me. I had developed a new sense of determination, a deeper understanding of human suffering, and a desire to push forward despite the obstacles in my path. I would not allow my physical limitations to dictate the course of my life. If my left hand could not hold a vial, then my right hand would do so with twice the strength. If my legs could not carry me with the swiftness of old, then I would learn to stand more firmly, more deliberately. I would continue my research into microorganisms and disease, using every remaining ounce of strength I had to contribute to the world. One of my major achievements during this period was the refinement of my technique for sterilizing liquids to prevent bacterial growth, which became known as pasteurization. I had already demonstrated the process in the brewing industry, where it was used to prevent spoilage in beer and wine. Now, I sought to expand the technique to other areas of public health, such as milk and other perishable food products. This work would have a profound impact on reducing diseases like tuberculosis, which were spread through contaminated milk, and would help save countless lives. In addition to pasteurization, I continued my work on vaccines. One of the most important developments during this time was my work on the rabies vaccine. I had long suspected that rabies, like other diseases, was caused by microorganisms. I began experimenting with a vaccine to prevent the disease, testing it on animals and eventually on humans. In 1885, I successfully administered the vaccine to a young boy who had been bitten by a rabid dog. The boy survived, and the vaccine was hailed as a major breakthrough in medicine. Despite the setbacks caused by my stroke, I refused to let my illness define me. I continued to focus on the pursuit of knowledge, the discovery of new treatments, and the advancement of science. My body may have faltered, but my mind remained sharp. I understood better than anyone that progress in science often requires sacrifice, persistence, and a willingness to confront adversity head-on. In time, I came to see my affliction not as a curse, but as a teacher. It reminded me of the fragility of life, of the countless souls who suffer in silence, unseen and unremembered. It fueled my desire to alleviate suffering, to push forward with the work that might save others from the cruelties of disease. My stroke had taught me that health, too, is a precious gift, and that we must cherish it while we have it. If I could endure, so could they. If I could persist, so could we all. My stroke may have weakened my body, but it strengthened my purpose. I knew that every experiment I conducted, every piece of research I published, was a step closer to a healthier world. And as long as my heart beat, be it in harmony or dissonance, I would dedicate every beat to the betterment of mankind. By the time of my death in 1895, I had made significant contributions to medicine that would last for generations. My work on vaccines, my studies of microorganisms, and my discoveries in the field of microbiology would change the way we understood disease and health. My achievements were not without struggle, and they were not without cost. But I had made peace with the trials I faced, and I knew that my work had been worth the sacrifice. Let this stand as a testament, that even when life casts us down, we can rise again, tempered by trial, unbroken in spirit. Though my body may have failed me, my work and my legacy continue to live on, inspiring future generations to continue the fight against disease and suffering. The struggle was long, and the path was difficult, but I had learned something invaluable, that resilience in the face of adversity is the true measure of a person. It is not the obstacles we face, but how we overcome them, that defines us. I had been brought to the brink of despair, but through my work, my perseverance, and my love for humanity, I found the strength to carry on. And so, even in the twilight of my years, I could look back with a sense of accomplishment. My work had made a difference, and in that difference, I had found my true purpose. In the end, it is not the scientific discoveries that define us, but the ways in which we use those discoveries to improve the lives of others. That is the true measure of a life well lived. Section 3. I used the achievements of my competitors and hid it. It is a curious thing, is it not, how the world will scrutinize not only your triumphs but the very steps you take to achieve them. I have long believed that science is a beacon, a light that pierces the darkness of ignorance and suffering. But what if the light casts shadows? What if the price of progress is a question mark upon one's integrity? I stand accused, you see, of a betrayal, not of men, but of ideals. It was during my work on the vaccine for anthrax, a scourge that laid waste to livestock and livelihoods alike. A challenge, no doubt, but one that demanded a solution, a swift and certain solution. And so, I plunged into the depths of experimentation, my mind consumed with purpose. I had already spent years studying microbes and developing vaccines for diseases like rabies and chicken cholera. My work had already begun to change the way the world viewed disease. I had demonstrated that microorganisms could cause fermentation, and later, that they were responsible for many diseases. This theory of germs, which we now take for granted, was revolutionary in its time, challenging the centuries-old belief in the miasma theory, that disease was caused by bad air. It was a breakthrough, and one that would define my legacy, but it also made me a target. As I worked on the anthrax vaccine, I found myself in competition with another scientist, Jean-Joseph Henri Toussaint. Toussaint had also been working on a vaccine for anthrax, and he was a respected figure in his own right. His research was promising, and I knew that his findings could be of great help to my work. However, in my race to find a solution to the anthrax problem, I took some of his findings and incorporated them into my own experiments without giving him due credit. This, I admit, was a mistake. The pressure was immense. The anthrax outbreak was devastating to farmers, particularly in rural France. Cattle were dying in droves, and the livelihoods of entire communities were at stake. At the time, no effective treatment or preventive measure existed. It was a crisis that needed an immediate solution. I was consumed by the urgency of the situation. And so, I used Toussaint's work as a stepping stone, incorporating it into my research to develop the first effective vaccine against anthrax. I did not take his research out of malice or greed, but out of necessity. But necessity is no excuse for a lack of transparency. When my vaccine proved successful, I was hailed as a hero. However, there were whispers in the scientific community. Toussaint had not been acknowledged, and many began to question my integrity. The accusations against me were harsh. I was branded a thief, a man who had stolen the labor of another for my own gain. My name, once spoken with reverence, was now whispered with suspicion. The pressure weighed on me, and for the first time in my career, I began to question whether my pursuit of knowledge and progress had come at too high a cost. Did I err? Perhaps. I should have given more honor to Toussaint, whose shoulders bore some of the burden I claimed as mine alone. But in my heart, I believed that the salvation of lives was more important than the quarrels of men. Was it not the goal to end the suffering of those who were affected by anthrax, to stop the deaths of animals and the economic ruin of farmers? Was it not the discovery that mattered more than the credit? My scientific career had always been marked by a single-minded focus on progress. I had spent years perfecting the germ theory of disease, and I had pioneered methods to prevent the spread of infections. My work on rabies led to the development of the first vaccine for the disease, which saved the life of a young boy who had been bitten by a rabid dog. I had developed pasteurization to prevent the spoilage of food and drink, revolutionizing the production of wine, beer, and milk. I had worked tirelessly to prove that germs were the cause of disease, laying the foundation for modern medicine. But in my work on anthrax, I found myself at the intersection of scientific achievement and ethical dilemma. My motivations had always been pure: saving lives, alleviating suffering, and advancing the cause of science. Yet, I realized that even the best of intentions can be marred by the pressures of competition and the desire for recognition. It is a humbling lesson, one that I have carried with me for the rest of my life. I cannot undo what was done, and I will not pretend that my actions were without fault. The history books will tell their story, and I will be judged for my decisions, both good and bad. But I can say this with certainty: I never acted out of malice. I was driven by the desire to find answers, to alleviate the suffering of those who relied on me. I have spent my life in service to humanity, and if my hands bear stains, they are the stains of labor, of sacrifice, and of devotion to a cause greater than myself. The work I did was not always easy, nor was it always pure. But it was always motivated by a deep sense of responsibility. I believed that the knowledge I was uncovering could change the world, could save lives, and could ease the suffering of countless people. And despite the mistakes I made along the way, I stand by that belief. Science is not about the individual, but about the collective good. It is about finding solutions to the problems that afflict us, and about using knowledge to improve the lives of others. As I look back on my career, I am proud of the work I accomplished. My contributions to the fields of microbiology and immunology have saved millions of lives. The vaccines I developed for rabies, anthrax, and chicken cholera have helped eradicate deadly diseases and have laid the groundwork for the vaccines we rely on today. My work on pasteurization has improved food safety and has saved countless people from foodborne illnesses. But I am also mindful of the flaws that marked my journey. I made mistakes, and I will be remembered for those as well. I hope that, in the end, my contributions to science will outweigh the controversies and ethical dilemmas that I faced. For it was never about personal glory or recognition. It was always about the pursuit of knowledge, the relief of suffering, and the betterment of humanity. Judge me if you must. Let history weigh my actions, my motives, my achievements. But know this: I have given my life to the pursuit of knowledge, to the betterment of humankind. If that journey was not always pure, then let it be said that I did what I could, with what I had, for those who needed me most. In the end, science is not a pursuit of perfection, but of progress. It is about moving forward, even in the face of failure, and about learning from our mistakes. It is about the betterment of humanity, and that, ultimately, is the greatest achievement of all. Section 4: I stopped believing in God. I have often found myself torn between two worlds, the world of science and the world of faith. Can a man truly serve both? Can he be both a servant of God and a seeker of the secrets of his creation? Or does one have to choose, to bow before one altar while turning his back on the other? I have spent much of my life struggling with this question, trying to reconcile the faith I was raised with and the science I have devoted myself to. I was born into a family where religion was deeply ingrained in everyday life. My father, a devout man, was a tanner, but his heart was fixed on his belief in God. He taught me that the Creator's hand was visible in every corner of the world, every sunrise, every blossom, every star in the sky. This belief shaped my early life. For much of my youth, I thought that my scientific pursuits, my curiosity about the natural world, were merely another way of worshiping God. To uncover the laws that govern the universe, I thought, was to learn more about the divine. I approached my studies with reverence, believing that science could be a means of understanding God's work, of revealing the divine order that lay beneath everything. But then, the questions began. Questions that didn't align with the comforting teachings I had grown up with. What is the spark of life? What causes the diseases that plague our bodies, stealing the lives of loved ones without warning? Is this illness the will of God, or is it something else entirely? Something more mechanical, more natural, and more terrifying. My search for answers led me down a path that would change my life forever, and would eventually challenge the very core of my faith. The year was 1857, and I was investigating fermentation, a process that had long baffled scientists. I was working to understand why some liquids spoiled and others did not. Through my experiments, I discovered that it wasn't just air or the passage of time that caused spoilage, it was the presence of microscopic organisms, living creatures that could not be seen by the naked eye. This revelation led me to the concept of germs, or microorganisms, which could cause disease and death. I had found that the very things that brought life to fermentation were also the agents of illness. I remember the first time I saw these microorganisms through my microscope, tiny, wriggling forms, invisible to the naked eye but potent in their ability to destroy life. I was both awed and horrified. These creatures could bring disease, they could bring death, but they could also bring healing. My work on pasteurization, which showed that heating liquids could kill harmful bacteria and make them safe to consume, was an early attempt to harness these microorganisms for the benefit of humanity. It was a discovery that would save countless lives, but it also posed a deeper question: were these germs part of God's creation, or were they evidence of a world indifferent to the prayers of men? I will never forget the day I was confronted by a bishop, a man of great authority. He accused me of hubris, saying that my work was an attempt to usurp the role of the Creator. "You seek to replace God with science," he said, his voice filled with judgment. How could I defend myself against such an accusation? Was it truly an act of arrogance to try to alleviate human suffering, to try to understand the causes of disease and find ways to prevent it? Was I wrong to strive to save lives, to find a cure for the illnesses that had ravaged families for centuries? It was in those moments that I felt the deepest conflict in my heart. My experiments led to discoveries that caused great change. Through the development of vaccines, such as the vaccine for anthrax and rabies, I showed the world that science could offer answers, could provide solutions to the suffering of humankind. But with every step forward, there was a question that followed me: was this work an act of faith, or an act of defiance? The more I learned, the more I began to see the world as a place where science, not faith, had the power to heal. Yet there were times when doubt gnawed at me. At night, I would pray for guidance, for some sign that my work was in line with the will of God. The silence I received in response only deepened my inner turmoil. In those moments, I began to question whether my pursuit of knowledge had moved me too far from the faith that had shaped my early life. Could I, in good conscience, continue on this path? Was the suffering I sought to alleviate part of a divine plan, or was it simply the product of a world that operated according to laws we were only beginning to understand? My work was not without its personal costs. I lost my beloved daughter Camille to a sudden illness in 1866, and her death was a blow from which I never fully recovered. How could I reconcile the tragic death of my child with my belief in a just and loving God? How could I continue my work, which had saved so many lives, when I was unable to save the one I loved most? It was in the wake of her death that I found myself praying more earnestly, searching for meaning in my grief, seeking some way to make sense of the suffering I had witnessed in my life. The pain of that loss reminded me that the answers I sought through science were not always enough to explain the mysteries of life and death. Despite my struggles, I continued my work. I had come to believe that the pursuit of knowledge was a sacred endeavor in its own right, that to seek truth was a form of worship, a way of understanding the Creator's will. I did not see myself as defying God, but rather as trying to understand the mechanisms He had put in place. My work with vaccines, particularly the rabies vaccine, was one such effort. In 1885, I treated a young boy named Joseph Meister, who had been bitten by a rabid dog, with the rabies vaccine I had developed. This was one of the defining moments of my career, and it reinforced my belief that science could alleviate suffering and save lives. In my final years, I continued to wrestle with the question of how to reconcile my faith with my work. I remained a man of faith, though my understanding of God had evolved. I did not believe that science and religion were incompatible, but I understood that the two often approached the world from different angles. Science seeks to explain the how of life, while faith seeks to understand the why. In the end, perhaps both are necessary to make sense of the complexity of existence. I died in 1895, leaving behind a legacy that transformed the world of science and medicine. My work had laid the foundation for the study of immunology, and my discoveries in microbiology had saved countless lives. But in the end, I am still the same man who once wondered if a person could serve both science and faith. I may never have fully reconciled the two, but I believe that my work was, in its own way, a reflection of both. I am Louis Pasteur, a man who sought to understand the mysteries of life, and who, in doing so, wrestled with the complexities of faith and doubt. I may never have had all the answers, but I have tried to live a life devoted to both the pursuit of knowledge and the service of humanity. In that, perhaps, lies the truest reflection of what it means to be human.